Okay. So I figured that we would just start with going through the objectives. I kind of just wrote these up for each lab, and we could kind of answer any questions you guys have, and then after that maybe we can go through the practice quiz that I wrote up together. So I was telling these guys that it's going to be mostly multiple choice, but also he does like fill in the blank. He'll have like one or two, and then he might have like a short answer where you have to talk about like a procedure that you did in lab. And he also sometimes will set up like a microscope with a slide on it, and you'll have to look through, and like he might say, you know, this has been treated with a gram stain, so, and is it gram negative or gram positive, and like you'll have to be able to identify that. So just be aware of that. So a lot of the things with the first lab I noticed kind of overlap with probably some things that you guys have already studied for exam 1. For instance, what are all the parts of a compound microscope and their function? I think you guys have probably studied that for the exam, the first exam. Let's see. So I know I have the lab manual from last year, but in mine it's on page 4, and that if you just go over this and just kind of know generally what each part is and what it does, then you should be fine. He might have like a microscope set up and, like, you know, might say, what is this, you know, what is this part of the microscope and what does it do? So, yeah. And do you guys know how to calculate the magnification of a compound microscope? Okay, so it's just the ocular power, which is usually 10 times the objective lens. So, and you should know what the 4 different objective lenses are: the scanning, the low power, the high power, and the oil immersion. Hi. Do you guys have any questions on that? You know what they all are? Okay. Thank you. I also have some objectives on Canvas. I don't have any printed out right now, so I'm just going to go through those. Okay. So do you guys know what resolution is defined as? Thanks, Lisa. I was like, it's kind of dark in here.
The ability to tell 2 distinct points apart, or something like that.
Right, and so the higher the power of the lens, does the resolution go up or down?
The higher power of the lens?
Yeah, like if it's
resolution
if you
would go up.
Yeah, yeah. So just be aware of that. Okay, and you might have a question on how oil immersion improves resolution. You know, what happens if you don't use oil immersion? So light can be refracted out until you lose a lot of light and get a blurry image. That's why you use oil immersion, and the oil has the same refractive index as glass, so the light isn't lost, and you have a higher resolution. And then I think in this lab you guys also looked at different shapes of bacteria, like cocci, bacilli, different things like that. Okay, because he might do something simple like just have a slide that is just a bunch of cocci, and he'll say, you know, what shape is this bacteria? So just be able to, like, you know, be able to distinguish between the cocci or the rods, the bacilli, or I think there was also some spiral bacteria. So. Okay. So any questions on lab 1? pretty straightforward. Okay, so I'm going to move on to lab 3. Who can tell me the time, temperature, and pressure of autoclaving? Because that's going to come in. It's going to come in somewhere, either in the lab or in the class. He's going to ask about it, or you're going to have to know about it.
I think we just learned that yesterday.
Yeah, you'll have to be able to pull up that information. So an easy way, I don't know. It's for 15 minutes, 121 degrees, and 15 pounds of pressure. So just that, it's easier for me to remember 15, 121, 15, rather than like 121, 15, 15. So however you can remember it.
And it's Celsius, right?
Yeah. And yeah, this is what they use actually in our lab to sterilize equipment. Another word for it is steam sterilization. You might need to know that. It's a good idea, it would be a good idea to know all the bold terms that are in the lab book. So autoclaving completely sterilizes the equipment, so there's no life on it after. Okay. Any questions on that? That's good. Okay. So in lab 3, it also talks about in the broth, you'll be able to see certain bacteria. So one of the words that is in this chapter is turbidity, and that is just general cloudiness, just because there's a lot of bacteria in the broth. So I remember when I took lab, he asked a couple questions about these different terms. There's turbidity, and let's see, down a few questions. It asks, what is flocculent and what does it look like? In my lab, it's on page 28, where it talks about flocculent, pellicle, and sediment. So I would be familiar with those terms. And it's just different ways of observing bacteria in a broth. These are only terms that are used with bacteria in broth cultures. So flocculent is kind of like snowflakes. It's just like floating around in the broth. Pellicle is just like a thin layer on top of the broth of bacteria. And then sediment is at the bottom of the broth. So, yeah? Oh, do you have something to add?
Yeah, with that, I remember he had like a test tube, and you had to look at it and say, okay, which one is this? And you had to write it down. So know how to write them. 'Cause that was the
Right, know how to spell them.
yeah.
Exactly.
He's very particular.
Yeah. And also, it could be more than one. So
Yeah.
just make sure, like when you read the question, if it says mark all that apply, like make sure you don't just choose one.
Yeah.
It's tricky that way. So did everybody get the practice quiz? Okay. I have lab objectives online, but I only printed out so many. So we're just going to go over the objectives first, and then I was thinking we could go through the practice quiz together. Okay. All right, what does it mean to inoculate something? Sometimes he'll ask like just really simple questions like this. So it's good to know these terms. Inoculation just means to intentionally introduce bacteria, like onto a petri dish or agar slant or something like that. Okay, so what is agar made of and why do we use it?
Made
Yeah, it's made of seaweed, and it kind of talks about this at the beginning of, it's the page before Lab 3, Part 2, and it just talks about how Robert Koch, he originally used gelatin and found out that it wasn't very stable. Like if you heated it up, it would become liquefied, and also bacteria a lot of times metabolized the gelatin and broke it down. And so, according to the book, it says his colleague Angela Hess suggested the use of agar, so because it's more stable at different temperatures and the bacteria doesn't eat it. So it would be good to know why, why we use agar. Now I don't know if you need to actually know names. What do you think?
I would know his name for sure.
Robert Koch.
Yeah, I would know, because I think he would put that in a question. I don't think he'd ask you, but.
Right, he wouldn't make you identify, but he might say, yeah, like Robert Koch used gelatin, why didn't this work?
Yeah,
Or
exactly.
something like that.
Yeah, so if you know it, you know the background.
Or Angela Hess came up with this type of medium or something like that.
Now, I don't know about you guys, but I think in his slides, didn't he say it was his wife Fanny?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
I know, so I don't know. In the lab it says right here, Angela Hess, so I don't know
Oh,
if
no,
that's.
I trust you.
And it says it's his colleague too, so I don't know.
Just remember him, some lady that he knows.
Yeah, Robert Koch's friend.
There you go.
Okay, let me see if there's anything else. Just know that all the tools that we use, like for instance, know the name of this. Just
How to spell it.
yeah, it's just and how to spell it. This is just an electric incinerator, so that's what we use to sterilize our loops and our needles, our inoculating loops and needles. Because sometimes he'll just put it out on the counter and just say, "What is this?" And you'll just have to write electric incinerator, so or something like that, or inoculating loop, or inoculating needle.
Does he mark it wrong if we spell it wrong?
Yes.
It depends. I think it depends on how badly it's spelled wrong, but.
Right. Yes.
I mean, if it's close, I think you might be able to argue your way into, he might like just mark 1 point off if it's spelled wrong. Yeah, so. Okay, so any questions on Lab 3? Let me see if I have anything I want to talk about.
Where
Yep.
did you put your lab objectives on Canvas? Where are they?
Oh, it should be under the tutor material. I just posted it, like at 10 o'clock this morning, so. Yeah, I posted objectives, a practice quiz, and the answers to the practice quiz. Okay, sorry, I skipped this one. So going back to Lab 1, can anybody tell me who Anton van Leeuwenhoek is? What he's known for?
Is he the guy that scraped his teeth
Yeah.
and looked at it? Okay.
So basically, he's just the first guy that looked at microbes under the microscope. He didn't invent the microscope, but he did invent like his own special, a simple single lens. Yeah. Okay. All right. And as far as Lab 3 goes, understand aseptic techniques. Aseptic techniques are procedures used to avoid introducing unwanted microbes to prevent spreading microbes. So that's what we use in lab. Okay. So moving on to Lab 4. So what is the difference between an inoculating loop and an inoculating needle? And what are each used for? Because they're both used for different things. So you can tell from the name that they're both used for inoculating things. Most often we use the loop. We use it on the Petri dish, agar slant, and in broths. But we use the inoculating needle for inoculating the semi-solid agar deep.